So, okay, officially welcome everybody to this month SIETAR Europa communication, cooperation, and everything connected with working with diversity. Today we will be talking about augmented agility for virtual teams, and our speakers will try to answer the question, is it possible to experience real agility in a remote working environment? So our speakers today are Anke Lindemann, who is broadcasting from Munich. She is working for a global company and she's agile coach and scrum master. And she has a degree in business computing and intercultural communication. And our second speaker today is Mridha, who is Indian by upbringing, but broadcasting from Paris today. And he is PPM expert and enterprise architect, intercultural enthusiast and international speaker. And he has a huge experience in consulting and regarding organizational change and agile transformations. So welcome both of you. I will give you the chance to present in a second, but I just wanted to say to everybody a bit about the rules of today. That might be a bit interesting how we want you to participate in our session. So today, our presentation is divided into two elements. The first one was the presentation itself, and the second part will be the Q&A. So whenever you will be having any questions, there is a Q&A session in the webinar in Zoom and your bar at the bottom. So if any questions pop up during the presentation, please could you post it in the Q&A option. Of course, you can comment all the time in the chat. We will also be monitoring that. But if you have a particular question connected to what's being said today, please post it in the Q&A, because at the end, we will open it and try to answer. By we, I'm of course thinking about Anke and Mithun. Okay, so I think that's all what we need at the beginning. Have fun. I'm really excited about the subject myself. So over to you.
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much, Agnieszka. And thanks to SIETAR Europa for having invited us and for putting this webinar on the agenda. And thanks to all the participants who are joining from all the countries. As I could see in the chat until now, it's really, really great to have you join us from all these diverse places, cities, and countries all across continents. So really excited about this. And I'm very happy and excited to share the platform with my friend Anke. So we have a question, just a quick question for you. We want you to reply through the chat. The question is, what is Agile for you? So please reply in the chat. What is Agile for you? One word. Anke, maybe you can comment on the chat.
Yeah, I can see. So it's about flexible, agile, getting new solutions, inspect and adapt, adapting, be present, experimental learning. Looks good. Adaptation.
Wonderful. And now we also want to extend the question. The next question is, why is Agile important for the intercultural field? So this is for all, especially for all SIETAR members who are working, or also for everyone who's working with multicultural teams? Why is Agile important for intercultural field?
Mhm. So we see adaptation, adapting again, different perspectives, adapt to changes, cultural environments, cross-functional, cross-national, yeah, respond to ambiguous, flexible, to have all voices, being a good and respectful dynamic.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I can say that I agree to all of your responses. Our world is really not predictable, and we need the feedback of reality at all times, and we need to accept reality as it is, and we need to adapt to it. So absolutely agree with you. So now if we would go a bit further, think back to the time before the corona pandemic. So what has changed tremendously in the last year in the pandemic that no one has thought of? So what does it mean for companies? So please answer in the chat. So what does it mean for companies, these changes?
Or what has changed? Yeah, remote work, working differently, re-engineer communication, geolocated work from home, increased insecurity. Yeah, virtual work, reinventing hybrid teams, lack of communication, relationship building is tougher, adaptation to change, well-being issues, digitalisation, new routines, connected disconnection, new work, new habits, communication challenged, getting comfortable with discomfort.
I like that.
Yeah, me too. And to react to a crisis.
Great.
Okay.
So thank you for all your responses, and absolutely for us, we saw a lot of changes, more than just the masks that we had to use, the production of value, the production of vaccines, the dependencies, the interdependencies between the countries. We saw a lot of different reactions from each of the countries. We saw also how the governments handle. So a lot has been going on, and so we are very glad to share some insights after all the interviews that we have been conducting in the last 2 months on these topics. So we would also like to thank all our friends and colleagues who accepted to be interviewed and accepted their responses to be used anonymously for this webinar. With this, I give the floor to you, Anke.
Yeah. So this is then a handover to the objective of this webinar. So with this webinar, we would like to give you an idea what Agile is, but as Mithun also said, to explore some examples and to have a closer look at virtuality and especially into the connection to the intercultural field. And then the agenda, or these are the topics which we plan. So first, we would like to have a look at the general, a little bit of theory, underlying principles and frameworks. But then we also have a short look into the reality, but have a bigger look at the virtuality and its challenges and opportunities. And then also on culture and Agile, we have some recommendations. And as said before, at the end, there will be a Q&A. Yeah, so this is then to start straight away. So to start with some definitions. So what is Agile? But I think I've seen some of the definitions already in the chat, so you're very good. So the official definition of the Agile Alliance is that Agile is the ability to create and to respond to change. So that's the most important part, to respond to change. And it is a way of dealing with and ultimately succeeding in an uncertain and turbulent environments. But what else is behind Agile, behind this respond to change? And Agile is actually a set of values and principles, which are described in the Agile Manifesto. So I think maybe you've seen that. So in the Agile Manifesto, you can find 4 values. One value, for instance, is individuals and interactions over processes and tools. And there, in addition, there are 12 principles. And an example for one principle could be, our highest priority is to satisfy the customer through early and continuous delivery of valuable software. So we see this is really a set of value and principles. And the last term we have here is the business agility. So this is also a term which is used a lot, but this is particularly with enterprises and big companies. So they really focus to say it's an ability to compete and thrive in the digital age by quickly also responding to the market change. So they focus on the market change and to emerging opportunities with innovative and digitally enabled business solutions. So they want to create business solutions based on the market changes. Yeah, so these are definitions. But then, yeah, you probably heard Agile, Scrum, so there are several terms out there, and often they are used, let's say, in a synonym way, but actually they are different. So as we saw before, Agile is really a set of values to respond to change, and it's therefore an umbrella term for several sets of frameworks. And one term which is used a lot is Scrum, but Scrum is just a framework which is based on the Agile values. And you can see here on the left side the umbrella, and you see different frameworks which are based on the Agile values. So the most commonly used are Scrum and Kanban, but you can also find some others like XP, like extreme programming, pair programming, or if you go more in a scaled area, it's for instance SAFe or less. But there are even more. These are just some examples. And another question which is often asked is, does it have to be Agile everything now, or is there still classical project management or waterfall there? And the answer is yes. It depends on your context and the environment. And as you can see on the right side in this diagram, so it's it's so-called Stacy matrix. And based on that, you can see what to use when. So if you're more in a certain environment, you know what the technology is and what the goals and requirements are, then you can still stay in, let's say, in an automation phase or use waterfall phase model. This is very good still, but only if it's getting more uncertain in regards to the how and the what, then you come more into a so-called complex area, and it would be more recommended to use Kanban. And if it's getting even more uncertain, it goes to the complicated area, then it would be recommended to use Scrum. And if you're at the very end, if everything is uncertain, then it's more design thinking what they would recommend. Yeah. So that was the frameworks. And now, as Mithun said, we did a lot of interviews, and in the interviews, we also asked the participants, what kind of misconception or myth do you know what people say about Agile or Scrum? And these are some examples which we heard or which we selected, which we think are the most commonly misconceptions out there. And the first one, which I heard a lot is, oh, I have a Kanban board, or we work in sprints, and this is for them Agile. But it's not always, or not only having a board as being Agile, it's, as we said, Agile is a set of values. Another one is, Scrum and Agile are the same, but as we saw in the definition and also with the umbrella, they are very close, or they are based on each other, but it's not the same. Another one is, with Scrum, we are 2 times faster. This is often used. It's, yeah, with Scrum, you're faster to respond to change, but maybe not necessarily faster in regards to the development cycle. The fourth one is Agile requires no documentation and everyone does what he wants. That's also often heard. It's another value in the HR manifesto. It says that the working software over documentation. So it's the documentation is not valued that high like a working software, but it doesn't mean that no documentation is needed. So therefore, yes, documentation is needed, but is not as valued as the working software. And the last one here on this slide is HR only works in software development companies. And this is, well, it does work, but it was founded in that area. But now we see there are also a lot of companies who work also in HR, which are not software development companies, which we will see, I think, with some slides from Mithun later. Yeah.
So I would just like to continue on the misconceptions. Other misconceptions we found are like agile means you produce more, or agile leads to cost reduction. So actually, if cost reduction is like really something that you are that's your organizational objective, so maybe it might be a part of the initiative, but that's not really what it leads to by default. And at the same time, agile doesn't mean that you really produce more. It means you produce more of what is valuable to you at the moment. Agility is a process or framework like Scrum, Kanban, less, and other frameworks. Or yeah, we also heard that you become agile by just adopting an agile framework, processes, and tools. So what we found missing in this kind of approach is that the mindset. So you really have to put the mindset over everything, because you just don't become agile by adopting an agile framework. A lot of organizations right now I see are focusing only on the framework and framework and the roles. So all the trainings are about the roles that people are having, and the roles are actually vertical in an organization, like Scrum Master, Product Owner. But what is beyond the role? And what are the voids beyond those roles and between the moving parts of an organization? So if you're not thinking about that, then that's definitely not making you agile. Then perception of doing agile versus being agile, and there is a lot of problems in that, because there is some clarity that people need, definitely. So I would again say that it's always about being agile. You cannot do agile. And then the final problem I found, misconception I found very common among people, is the lack of clarity on the role of agile coach. The word coach itself means that you are actually leading a person through questions. You are not showing, you are not being the expert, you are just giving the directions. You are leading people into new behaviors. So that's what a coach normally does. But when you see the role of agile coach, it's not really the role of a coach. It's more, I would say, as a framework expert. So what organizations are right now more looking for in an agile coach is more as an expert of a framework that can help and guide the teams to follow through and implement the agile ways of working. Um, so something I wanted to share from which has been published recently in the Capgemini Agile Capability Survey in September 2020. So you can see that Agile, Anke already said this before, that Agile was thought always associated with software teams and software development. Of course, it initially has its roots in the IT, but we can see a lot of very strong, very big examples in the sectors like customer services, in legal, in sales and marketing, in new product development, and in human resources. And we are finding more and more applications of Agile, more and more initiatives which are cross departments, and also a lot of initiatives which are across the organization. So I think this is not the beginning of the end, but it's just the end of the beginning. for Agile, because it has begun for some companies. So what we see in the companies is there are few enterprises which are having more than 10 years of Agile experience. So they have been implementing Agile processes, Agile ways of structuring their initiatives at their portfolio level, so which is called Agile at scale. And so I can give you examples like ExxonMobil, the Standard Bank in Africa. So they are really actually having full implementation of Agile, not just in certain departments, but also at an enterprise level. So there are lots of other examples, and but what we see more commonly in enterprises are the majority of companies which are somewhere in the middle of their Agile journey. That means they started 5 or 10 years back, 5 to 10 years back, and they are working with Agile, but there is a part of the enterprise which is not fully tuned to Agile. So they are not fully scaled to Agile, and that's what is going on. So the companies, examples of companies are Société Générale, the French bank, EDF or Électricité de France. We have many companies which come into this. And now with what is happening really in the most recent companies, or the novices who are beginning to experiment with Agile. So these are enterprises which are having less than 5 years of experience. And this is the huge boom, especially with all the new changing environments. We have been talking a lot about VUCA and the pandemic. So everything has actually, let's say, pushed companies to embrace agility at a very fast pace. So I think the companies which are beginning to experiment, that's increasing at a very high rate. So this is, if you see the diagram, you're saying, so this is from the Capgemini Agile Capability Survey. So what we found are 4 kinds of lag, which are the key challenges of implementing agility at the organizational level. So the first one is cultural lag. It means your culture and your mindset are the biggest obstacles. So your culture is not at the same level of advancement as your mindset. So your culture is lacking, although your objectives and you wish to go beyond your culture. So culture is pulling you back, and that's around 82% of the companies were found to be in this part, this challenge. Then 64% of the enterprises are facing technical lag, and that means the technical side of the transformation is not progressing at the desired pace. So it's limiting autonomy, flexibility, and productivity gains of delivery teams. So it means when you think about a transformation, you have to take care of the technical side. So the change begins also with the technology, because you have to think about what kind of environment, what kind of enterprise architecture, what kind of softwares and tools you would need to have from the beginning to lead this kind of transformation. And then 56% of the companies are having the alignment lag, which is the business objectives not being fully aligned with the intent of transformation. And then 53% of the companies have a problem with scalability. And scalability is, it means that you are able to manage Agile at the level of small teams, individual teams, but when you have to scale at the organizational level, across boundaries, across departments, you're facing some problems. So so the reality is that transformation is very slow, it's expensive, and it's irreversible. And we have very, very diverse examples of challenges which are being faced by enterprises. So we'll continue on the virtuality and the challenges. So maybe Anke, if you want to continue.
Yeah. So this is a little bit what was before the pandemic and how is it now. So if you had a look on Agile teams before Corona, the teams were mostly co-located at one place. And this was out of two reasons, because working in an Agile teams requires very close collaboration, because you have very frequent interactions with each other. And the second one is that there are two sentences also in the Agile Manifesto, which are very important for that, which were often used also as an argument. So the first one is that it was seen, or is still seen, that the most efficient and effective method of conveying information to and within the development team is face-to-face communication. And the second one is that business people and developers must work together daily throughout the project. And that was the reason why it was always said the team should be co-located. But now, after more than a year of pandemic, so we see that that teams also can work in a virtual environment. And so that's the reason why we would like to have a closer look at the challenges and opportunities which we observed during the last year. So to start with the challenges, so there are a few ones which we observed a lot. So the first one is, to build relationship. It's, I mean, they're good tools. It's to bridge this, but it's still different to meet the people in person instead of just seeing them in a camera. It's much easier to get to know each other by having team building activities or social dinners. And with that, also to build a trust or to network and to socialize. So this is, in my opinion, one of the biggest challenges. Another one is also the onboarding process, especially when you try to get new people on board. It may take really longer or incomplete because some parts cannot be really done when you try to get the people into the teams. Another one is to access to people. So in the past, when the teams were in the office, you could just drop by and say, oh, I can introduce you a new colleague, or you can see if the colleague is there. But this might be difficult in a virtual environment because sometimes you may see them online via status, but maybe not. So it's much more difficult to get in contact with them. And another one is to recognize or to appreciate the colleagues, especially for maybe for some developers. If they've done great work, it's more difficult for them it is seen what they did. So to give also appreciation to them. Yeah.
You also found some major complexities due to distributed decision-making processes and activities, because your decision makers are not the same at the different levels. They are not based in the same countries or cities, and for a decision making and to have the right intent and to have the right consensus at all the levels, especially in a virtual environment, is very complicated. And we also found some challenges in the interpretation of roles and responsibilities. So the same name or the role, even if there was a description, it was interpreted a bit differently in different places. And the hierarchy, managing it, and the relationships, although we have a very different levels of hierarchy in different organizations and in different countries, but still in a virtual agile environment and managing the relationships along with the hierarchy, even if there is no hierarchy within the agile team, but across the organization, there is always hierarchy to manage, and that can be quite challenging.
But then having a look at opportunities, because some things are quite good in a virtual environment, let's say, or this is what it was told also to me. So some colleagues told me, oh, I like it even more because they have the feeling that some meetings are even more effective, because you go into the meeting, you start directly, you watched the same screen, you can immediately change things, you have an agenda, and then you're done. So this is the perception of some colleagues. Another option is that you have also the option to stretch the meetings or the trainings. This applies particularly to workshops and trainings, maybe for a longer period. Because in the past, everyone was flying into somewhere, and you had maybe 3 days. You had to plan, what do I do in these 3 days, and you try to squeeze in everything as much as possible. But now in the online world, you can also stretch the things maybe over a week or even 2, and you can give time to the colleagues to think about things or to reflect. And I think that we've seen that also in a conference in Ireland, but also in Switzerland, where also the online conferences were stretched over 2 weeks, for instance, and I think mainly in the afternoon or evening. So this was one. And another one is that, it's getting more and more global. So people can join from all over the world. It's not only restricted to people being close by. We've seen that also in SIETAR, but I also see it in companies that the people can join from all over the world. And especially also another example I had in my case is that when you had, for instance, 2 teams, maybe one in Germany, another one in Turkey, then usually one team was all together in one room, and then they had just 1 or 2 people in Turkey, and they had to listen to the whole conversation by a speaker. And that's not the case anymore. So they can listen to everyone in the same level because they all have the same technical constraints now. And so they don't feel alone. So they are also more part of the team now. And with that, when all people from all over the world can join, you can also access the best talent. So you can really look for the people who fit best to the position.
We saw that the video technology improved a lot recently, and especially when in meetings, when the are used, it changes a lot, and you get a more you have a more feeling of connected with the person when apart from the meetings where you are actually not having the video and also your audio is off, so it's kind of not so this is absolutely a challenge to have opportunity to have this kind of video technology embedded in most platforms. Then virtual is also one room because you can always access people, so it's much more easy to organize and get people in the room and have the meeting, especially on MS Teams. If I'm in a meeting with a colleague and we just want 2 other people, it's much easier to just add them to the meeting, which in a face-to-face world would have been difficult to go all the way to their meeting, their rooms, and find them where they are. So this kind of sometimes helps. And also we found from our interviews, we have some agilists in the US who were able to combine a lot of work in one single day of work day because of the time zone differences of like 12 hours between the US teams and the Indian teams. So when the both teams were working together as an agile team, so the Indian team would get part of the work done by their end of the day, and the American team would take it from there. And that was very fast in certain areas, and they were quite surprised themselves. So this is, if you want to take a picture of or a screenshot of this, so this is, I found it very well done, this research where the challenges of virtuality in the book on leading virtual project teams. It's by Margaret Lee. And what she did is this classifying it in terms of communications, cultural teams, interpersonal, technological, and economical. So what kind of challenges are you facing? So I think just it gives a very good summary of what kind of challenges are faced. And for those who are more interested on the cultural dimensions, so like what kind of communication could be preferable for individualistic cultures, collectivist cultures, low context, high context, low power distance, high power distance cultures. So you do have this table which really summarizes you, and then it also lets you know what kind of virtual leadership you have to focus on. So for each of those dimensions, you have some specific leadership focus that you could do. And really, leadership and change, they both go together. And what is really important, we know that change is possible in 2 ways, like changing people's personality or changing people's environment. And we all know that changing people's personality is very difficult. Changing people's environment is much easier, and that's why change should come through creating the best environment as a leader. And that's why it's good to make note of all these leadership focus areas that you can get. So this slide, you can take a screenshot, and to continue on that, the other cultural dimensions like feminine cultures, monochronic cultures, polychronic cultures, low cultures with low uncertainty avoidance and high uncertainty avoidance. So I think we we can continue on that. So some limits we really found in our interviews about virtual agility. So of course, we know that we are not at the same level of engagement. So the relationships, there are low levels of connection, empathy, sharing emotion is very difficult. Even if with the video you're not still feeling the presence of another person, you can't smell, you are not getting the real contact. And also people who do like having a real handshake or giving a hug to their colleagues when they achieved a major milestone, and that's absolutely not possible through virtual. So I think that part of relationships is limiting. About objectives, so a lot of agile coaches we interviewed are confirmed that they did not achieve the same level of amount of their goals in the COVID times that than what they achieved with exactly the same teams before COVID. So of course there is some limit in terms of goal achievement that the teams have experienced over the last 12 months. Then in terms of integration or onboarding, so there is absolutely no possibility now for online integration team period for distributed teams. For example, teams in Australia who used to invite teams from Asia for 3 or 4 months to integrate the agile ways of working for the beginning, from the beginning of the project. And then these teams would come from time to time to visit the Australian team. So during the last 12 months, all these on-site meetings or integration meetings were not possible, and so there was some connection missing in that as well. Then turnover, people feel that since the sense of belonging to the team and to the organization is kind of weaker than before, turnover has increased in these times. And there is also a risk of dominant cultures whenever you have several cultures involved in a project. If there are many people from one culture, of course they might have a influence in deciding what's the way to go, or what are the process, what is the accepted protocol. So again, in the book, if you want to have a screenshot of this, so it's from the book on managing virtual project teams. It really gives you an idea, recommendation on what kind of communication need or problem can be solved by what kind of tool, like long email chains. It's better to have a phone call. That's the most effective tool. But then when you want to go beyond that and have a real list of all software tools that you can use for all your specific communication needs, I think this list is a very, very good list. And Anke will continue on these communication tools later, on very specific tools to be used at specific phases of the projects.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this I will try to do. So I try to make it as close as or as fast as possible, because I think we are running out of time, but I try to explain it as best as possible, because we would like to give a little bit of a example from practice out of a Scrum team. So I was working based on Scrum, and this is what you see here, the Scrum framework. And we've selected certain artifacts and ceremonies out of Scrum, which we would like to describe further how that can work in a virtual environment, which tools to use, and which intercultural aspects could play a role. And yeah, so I explain it maybe in the next one. So you can see here from the framework, it's a Scrum is based on iterations. So the team runs through iterations, and to increase the product, there are two main artifacts, which is the product backlog, which includes all the items which need to be done to increase the product, and a sprint backlog where only the items get into which are supposed to be done in the next iteration. And then there are 4 ceremonies, which is the sprint planning, so to plan the sprint, then to have the daily, to have at the end the review meeting, and then a retrospective, but I will show them in a second. So the first one, we've selected only one artifact, it's the product backlog. And as I said, so the product backlog is really the place where it's an emergent ordered list of what is needed to improve the product. And for this one, it is highly recommended to use tools like an online board tool, I call it. It's, for instance, Jira from Atlassian, but I think this is quite common already. And but there are also other tools out there. It's not the only one, but that's, let's say, the central tool, because it's really good that you can see all the items which need to be done, and you can order them, and you can add it to the sprints. It's also good to use that in combination with the wiki, that you can share some information, that you can create some pages, and for instance, like the product goal in case of the product backlog, or maybe to use also the tool called Slack to have in between communication between the members a little bit more, so that they can align. In a virtual environment, it's good to use the wiki to publish, for instance, policies like the definition of done or ready, or to use the story mapping features within the online boarding tools to really visualize online the dependencies and the prioritization of certain stories. And for the estimation, also to use maybe physical cards or in a camera, so to make sure that you understand what the others mean, how big the issue is or not. In the intercultural aspect, you may face the issue that there are different ideas about the ordering process in the backlog, so that colleagues have a different idea how things get ordered, or that they have different ideas about how deep content of a product backlog item should be. Shall I describe a lot, or maybe just one sentence? And the last one here was to focus, that sometimes they focus more on the what and not on the how. Or it's I'm sorry, it's supposed to, in the product backlog, it's to focus on the what and not on the how, but this is often done in the wrong way. Okay. In the sprint planning meeting, this is really the meeting way to plan the next iteration, and to define what is the value, what can be done, and to get in a commitment, which is the most important thing. And in terms of tools, here again, it's the same like in the other one before, to use the online board tool, and also for the virtual environment, it's to have a shared agenda. But what is more important for, let's go directly to the intercultural part, is you may struggle with that people have different understanding of the sprint goal and value, and also how much needs to be described in a story, so that this can be added to the sprint, so that it has a lot of enough detail. So this is really to be considered. And the last one is the understanding of commitment, because often what I experienced, that a lot of people said, yeah, we commit, but they just commit to start, but it's not a commitment to finish. And I think there are different perspectives between different people of different cultures. In the daily stand-up, it's a 15 minutes time box each day, where the team inspects the progress towards the sprint goal. And here again, in terms of tool, again, the online board tool is most important. But in a virtual environment, it's also good to work with a shared view, to have a screen sharing, to see the board, to see where they are. But you may also have challenges in the time zone of the members to find the right time for this meeting. But it's also good to rotate the facilitation, and also to open the meeting before and after. And the challenges are, it could be a status meeting, and that's really much a time box, and it doesn't have any social interaction. Then we have just 5 minutes, so I try to be some faster. So for the review meeting, the most important one here is also screen sharing, and to adopt directly in the board, Also that the members can share their system demo directly in the system, but to use also the chat functionality to get feedback, which is the most important part of that meeting. And challenges can be that, that people don't want to show unfinished, not completed topics, or they are afraid to get feedback from, for instance, senior managers because of saving face. Yeah. And the last one is the retrospective, where the team respects or reflects on how the process went and to improve. So for the team processes. And here there are very nice tools now out there, which is Mira or Mural, where the teams can really work on the same board at the same time and to create something together. So this is very good and very helpful. But you can also use a whiteboard, and breakout sessions like in Zoom is very good, but also to use different retro formats. And intercultural aspects could be that people hesitate to discuss topics of concern, and there's no one there to tell them what to do. It's the team that needs to find its own way. That's often a challenge. Yeah.
So a lot of the teams, especially in Australia, we have already people who are complaining because they are facing a reverse cultural shock when they're coming back to the office. So this is a question to you: do we all get a reverse cultural shock when we will return to our offices? Some other ideas or anecdotes we heard, which were, if you want to scratch below the surface, is like argumentative decision-making approach can be seen as a danger to harmony. For example, a Scrum Master from China, she ended up in tears after the first day of integration with an Australian Agile team. Then we have a big challenge worldwide with the new generation who are more focused on instant gratification, social media, and Amazon way of seeing the world, like I see it, I buy it, I have it. And this is also seen in many organizations where companies just want to buy agility by getting some agile coaches in the company, but there is much more to it. We also have challenges of product owners in indirect face saving cultures. For example, product owners in India who accepted all the stories in the backlog. Then we found also problems due to sharing personal information and bad news. So for example, an Asian team shared bad news very late to their European counterparts in an agile enterprise-wide initiative. We also found voids in the culture because only machine world thinking is happening, the rational thinking, and no systems thinking especially in agile transformation. The language and vocabulary are sources of problems. Speak French, we found a example where French speaking teams speaking the same language, but they were based in France, Spain, Morocco, and Canada, and they had issues understanding the same terms. Um, uh, Issues due to different belief systems, for example, impact of religious ethics or philosophies on the daily team activities of an agile team. Hierarchy created sometimes in flat teams. We found that, for example, a Scrum Master was seen as a manager in an Asian Scrum team because they felt the missing need of hierarchy. And metaphors are important, but they can be misinterpreted. Like velocity, it's viewed sometimes as a measure of speed, and also ignoring the levels of complexity, which can be completely delusional for teams. Uh, yeah,
I don't know, maybe we can go over these because out of timing reasons.
Yeah, we can.
Because it's a kind of a summary, or it's what we've said before.
Some of the misfits that we said before, and we did find some voices of agilists across the world during our interviews, and something which amused me was some companies trying to create self-organizing agile teams through command and control. From Canada, the agile is an opportunity to develop T-shaped profiles, so that was very interesting. The pace of embracing agile is very different across industries, and traditional industries are slow at accepting. This comes from Switzerland. Then a truly multicultural team might be easier than a dual cultural team with two cultures. One is likely to dominate, or if balanced, risk resulting in two camps. However, if a team were truly multicultural with no one dominating culture, the diversity would offer opportunities to exploit strengths of each culture. So this came from one of the interviews in the US. And yeah, I can say the really you need to put business and technical objectives first and frameworks next. Anke.
Okay, so can we go on or shall we stop? Because I see.
Maybe we can just go very quickly and then we can move to the
Yeah.
Q&A.
So this is kind of a conclusion, and then so it's for here the conclusion is really agile is the change of culture in a company, how people work together. It is for a company going to agile, it is a transformation process. And in a transformation process, you touched several levels of culture. So the business culture, the organization, the profession, and as well the individual. And it is a long-term negotiation and reconciliation process within a company where you need to time to try things out and to inspect and adapt to find a way for the company in that particular context. And there is not really a recipe for introducing that. It's really about each company to find its own way of agility. And for that, it really needs good coaches to support the company to go through the process by, on one hand, introducing the frameworks to make sure that they run in a good way, but also to facilitate especially discussions with the teams so that the teams can find their own way.
We also found in a recent survey that Agile is here to stay. So 74% of the participants believe that they will be considerably spending more and more time in doing virtual work than before COVID. So we really have to find new ways to emotionally connect with teams. So the idea is to be out of sight, but still in mind. We do have some books that you can consult. So these are that we chose to recommend you, and some websites that you can go through. So you can get it in the recording. You can just take a picture from the recording, which will be posted in the SIETAR Europa channel. So we will go just directly to the response. So we did find some keys, skills and competencies across the interviews that were all highlighted. So really flexibility, empathy, acceptance, curiosity, deep listening, and knowledge of the frameworks, problem solving. So these are really the skills and competencies you need to succeed in Agile virtually. Trust is important, and I really recommend you this book, The Decision to Trust. You need to know what is making teams make distrusting choices and trusting choices, and think about this trust triangle between authenticity, logic, and empathy. And really, you have to go across aligning interests, situational security, and predictability. Don't forget the psychological well-being during the COVID period. So this research comes from the World Happiness Report 2021, and really think about how, as an agile team, you can stay healthy. So we would like to move to the Q&A. So Agnieszka, please.
Yes,
I
you
let
have
you.
6 questions.
Mhm.
So you have like 5 minutes to do so. Okay, being agile is a mindset and attitude. So is developing a growth mindset a mental process needed to reach agility, or are there other ways for that? Oh, tough one at the beginning.
Yeah.
How can you reply to that?
No, I think, in my opinion, developing a growth mindset is a very good way to do that. So to that the people get open to the things and to want to grow and to learn, and that's the main part in Agile, I would say.
And I would just add to that, that don't forget about the system or the environment that you are in, because it's not only about the individual, it's also about the environment. A bad system will beat a good person every time. So you have to fix the system.
Mhm. Okay, we have the next one. Do you see any correlation between agility and intercultural competencies or cultural intelligence?
Absolutely. So if you see just the slide we presented about the competencies, so you can see like empathy, acceptance, curiosity, openness, flexibility, deep listening. I think those who are experienced in intercultural management, you all know that they have been always highlighted in intercultural trainings. The divergent thinking, having a combination of convergent and divergent thinking for intercultural leadership has always been highlighted. So I think yes, they go in the same direction.
Okay, we have the next one. To work well across various diverse teams and or projects.
Can you please repeat the question?
Mm-hmm.
Are there particular environments that tend to work well across various diverse teams and or projects?
Particular environments. What is meant with environment?
There's a question by in mind with this question, so maybe
I think I can just respond to it saying that I think the amount of psychological safety that you develop in the teams, in the environment, how much the teams are autonomous, and that really makes a difference. And the whole role of manager is very important, because they have to understand that motivation is intrinsic. It's all the extrinsic motivation and models. The external motivators always uh, actually go through an internal motivator to intrinsic motivator to really work. So they have to understand how people really do, why people do what they do. And you have Daniel Pink's model of motivation, where he talks about mastery, autonomy. So you do have to think about those concepts. And I would also suggest that you have to see if your teams are actively engaged, or are they actively engaged to sabotage the organization. So I think creating the environment is really important. If you don't have the environment, you cannot have the individuals work together.
Last minute. Why are dominant cultures more a risk in virtual teams?
I think it goes very fast, this kind of dichotomy, like us versus them. And that's why in virtual you have less ways to spend time to have fun. So the reconciliation takes of the dilemmas takes place a lot of the times when you are spending time after work, like over dinner, or having a lunch together, or having those private moments, which those water cooler discussions which are missing. And I think that these missing moments actually enhances the risk of having this kind of us versus them issues. And so I think the dominant cultures, it's developed easily when you have more people from one country or one culture in the team.
Mm-hmm. 3 questions left. The question is more to the audience. Are you willing to spend like few minutes more with us to hear the answers? I'm hoping yes. So I'm quickly reading another question. Do I hear you using agile and agility interchangeably, or is there a difference in usage?
Shall I, or me to you?
Okay, go ahead.
So for me, it's often it is used as in the same way, but it's for me, it's Agile is really the mindset and the mindset and also the term itself. But agility is often used in terms of the business agility. It's often together with to be or to have a certain agility in a business.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe you can enhance that, Mithun.
Yeah, I think agility is more from a mindset perspective. So and also on an organizational perspective. So both are used, and
Yeah.
agile is more for me. It's more at a team perspective. That's how I use the terms.
Okay.
But yeah, there are many ways of
Many different ways.
many different ways of using the terms. So let's move to the next question.
Explain role of gamification in retro phase.
Yeah. I think we had it in the example. It's
yeah, I could give the example of my colleague in Toulouse. So they have gamified completely the retrospectives, and so they have a game. They have even they have special creative names or avatars for the people. So actually they completely discover the retrospective in a game way. There are points, there are people who win, there are people who lose, and it all ends in a very fun way to see what they did. So I really like. Anke, what about your thoughts on that?
you can use any kind of games also in a retrospective. So you can I also once did it with Lego or any other formats where the participants need to play something. That's often very funny, and they often like it.
Okay, last question. And for those who are leaving, please remember that you have a chance to listen to a follow-up to this story on November in SIETAR, Italy. So look for information. Last question. Agile processes tend to be quick and dirty. What guarantees long-term quality to avoid things like being 737 disaster?
Here, I think I would refer to the Agile Manifesto. So this is right. It's a lot of people think, oh, everything needs to be fast and dirty, and we need to go through it very fast. But if the teams really stick to the values and principles which we find in the Agile Manifesto, it's also about quality, so that the team not only does to get the things done as soon as possible, but it's also to have a look at the quality and only to do or to bring things undone which are really done and which also meet certain criteria. And that's why in Scrum, for instance, they have the definition of done, where it's defined what needs to be that needs to happen that something is done.
Okay, and you managed.
Great. We do have three wrap up top three messages that we wanted to share with you. So agility is a mindset above everything. So it's not only the processes, tools, governance, but it's a whole complete culture change. Business agility, that's the key, and it really means having a balance between ambition and patience. And successful agile teams can operate in virtual. We have seen so many examples, and COVID has really provided us the unusual alibi to test, prove, and confirm this. Maybe we're not achieving the same level of goals, but we can operate successfully.
Okay.
So just to wind up, so did you learn what you came here for?
Yep. And what's my most important contribution to create an agile future?
So with these thoughts, think about your next steps. And with this, we would like to wind up this session. So it was a wonderful to share this moment with you. Thanks to all the participants. Only you made this webinar possible. Thank you, Agnieszka and SIETAR Europa for hosting us.
Thank you so much. It was wonderful to hear what you were saying, and see all of you in our next webinar or cultural coffee breaks. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Goodbye, everyone.